Oh, I'm hearing all the beeps.
Ding, 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 ding. Yep.
Yes.
That's
yeah.
cool.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome.
Good evening, everybody.
Welcome to the Thursday show, the Thursday showgram.
Which we were just commenting, which was the fact that it's Thursday was as much of a shock to me as it was to anybody else.
Yeah, it was a shock to me as well, because I looked at the calendar and was like, "Oh crap, where's the what story are we doing today?"
Well, that was when you put on the thing, said, "Oh, see you at 10 o'clock," because for those who are watching, Nick's very good. He does translate everything into UK time for me, so I know I've got no excuses. And
it only took one time for me. Hey, you gonna be here?
What's
going on?
Yeah. Oh, that was a classic episode, though. I've seen you. Basically, I watched that bit back on things, and I'm fairly sure he's going to be here at some point. Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe.
Oh, he just sent me a message going, "Bugger, run!" As I sprinted down our garden to get the gear set up, and it was the one time that I didn't have my laptop set up as well. Just booting up.
Yeah, it is a Thursday afternoon for me, evening for you, and we are here to talk human factors. This is the pre-show. Wait, why does it say post-show then? Let's change that. This is the pre-show, as you can see. It says so down below, so it must be true, right?
That's what it says.
Yeah, so we typically do the show notes here during the pre-show, but I was on a good one. The pills have been kicking in apparently, and we're nearly complete. We only need like one more it came from section, I guess. So
yeah, I guess again, just to put it into context for everybody else, normally Nick will put something up there saying, it looks like it's going to be this kind of story, so I'll start reading it, and then when the story's confirmed, that's probably about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon for me. So I'll then start dipping into it and cut out later things about what the blurb's going to be and all that sort of stuff. Came into it today, and Nick sends out the show notes, and I'm like, well done. It's there. I'm redundant. I don't know what to do anymore. So we need one more. It came from.
Yes, we need one more. It came from. I wish I had that energy for other things too. Like tomorrow we're having our lab kickoff meeting, and for the Human Factors Cast Digital Media Lab. If you're interested, reach out to us. Happy to have a conversation about maybe whether or not it would work for you, and what we're doing there. So I need to put together that kickoff brief because I need to let everybody know what's going on.
I'd say it's at a time where I can quite possibly make it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Should
Let's
be
see
good.
here. So I'm looking.
I have been invited out for a couple of glasses, end of week glasses of wine as well. So I'll see how it goes.
Yeah, well, if you need to cut it short or if you're a little bit late, that's fine, depending on whenever,
Depends how bad tomorrow is.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm running a workshop tomorrow, but it's the last workshop in a in the 2-year program, and so it'll be fun.
Oh, let's see here. We have specific questions about specific programs that I don't like answering because we don't have that context.
Versus HCI. Nope. How could you? That's a strange decision. So there's one there. Should I choose an MBA or an HCI degree?
I did see that one.
That's a true. It depends. Do you want to be basically
what do you want
business
to do?
Project manager, or do you want to be a designer? Kind of. Yeah. Maybe I'm being too simplistic.
Yeah. To me, that's just like that's a pre-show question. Do what you want.
Yeah.
Figure it out yourself because we can't answer that for you.
Go and talk to yourself in the mirror and see what the mirror says.
Yeah. A magic 8-ball or a Ouija board might be more effective than.
Or a coin. Whatever works.
Let's see here. Product designers.
How's the HCI program at University of Michigan, Dearborn? I have no idea. There you go.
Never been. Product designers. What tools does your team use to track work? So this one's interesting. And I feel like we've talked about this before.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about how to tracking work within teams, but not necessarily tools. Well, I haven't talked. You might have talked about tools before. I don't think I have.
Yeah, we've talked about tools in the past. It could be worth it to revisit it. I know it's a question that comes up quite frequently. Is like, what are the most effective things? And kind of like spoilers, I guess. Not spoilers. I've said it on the show before. Like my fallback answer for that is always like, what is everybody else using? What are the developers using? Use that and align to what they're doing. Is kind of my go-to answer. As a human factors person, as a UX person, you should be flexible. That should be part of your skill set. And so learn to use their tool and make it work for your instance. I guess that's kind of...
I mean, they mentioned Jira. I have a love-hate relationship with Jira.
I do too.
Because it is agile, but it can be used agile, it can be used waterfall, but it kind of does both badly. Not badly, but just not fully.
It really depends on how... Here it goes. It really depends on how it's set up. It really does depend on how it's set up. And a lot of the time, if you're aligning to like developer Jira, like I can see where those roadblocks would pop up because I've hit them before. And so it's very much having a conversation with the Jira admins or becoming a Jira admin.
Yes.
To help influence exactly how things go. Let's see here. We have a question in the chat here. Should you know design to get into the field of human factors? This is a great question.
No, not necessarily. It helps, but if you want to get into the design element of, so you're doing HCI design, you're doing product design, you're doing that sort of element of it, then clearly a bit of design would help. But if you want to get into safety testing, if you want to get into human practice integration, you want to get into them sort of things, you don't need to know design. Generally, as long as you've got a fairly sensible head on your shoulders and you're pragmatic and you can actually talk to people and not punch people in the face every time you see them and swear at them, then generally you might be quite good at human factors. So
yeah, we'll be talking a little bit about skill sets a little later, and in terms of building those skill sets in like an undergrad environment. Communication is one of those bigger ones. I think if design is of interest to you, I wouldn't like shy away from it. In fact, it can be really helpful to understand from a design perspective kind of what's possible with tools out there, kind of how they operate, because your role as a human factors practitioner is going to be a lot of that communication piece between the designers, between the developers, between a lot of different stakeholders. And so the more kind of insight you have into each role could be a good thing. I wouldn't say like go out of your way to do it. There's also sort of the this is a really great question, actually, because there's also sort of the translation piece between user research or scientific research that you do in academia and what that translates to in terms of a design. And so, if you have some of those design skills, you can whip something together and throw it over to the design team for them to polish it up, where you're kind of creating something based on the feedback that you've received, or tested or evaluated or whatever you're doing for that project. So try to keep it fairly vague.
I guess and in that respect, it would be quite helpful to know what your interest is, because if you want to get into the design side, I spend a fair bit of time doing interface design for various platforms. And knowing design isn't necessarily like having the degree or whatever. It can be just having an interest in it, and then being fairly sensible in simple things like the use of color, the groupings of things, and being able to read into what makes other people tick. So there's knowing and there's knowing, I think, as well. So and from a selfish perspective, I think it's quite a cool thing to do, but it's not the be all and end all. I've worked with loads of people in the training domain, for example, who wouldn't know a good design if it slapped them around the face like a wet kipper. So the answer is definitely it depends.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, thank you for that question, Deep Sea Hippo. Appreciate it. We got another one here. Biggest subfields of human factors. Oh,
so
okay. Well, there's aviation, there's military defense domain, there's
oil and gas,
there's healthcare,
nuclear.
Nuclear is pretty big too.
Medical's getting up there now, though.
Yeah. I just said medicals.
Oh, you said that. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fine. We can. The fact that we both said it is big.
Yeah. That helped. And then I guess in the subfield, I mean, you have got sort of interface design, you've got training, you've got physical design, you've got test and evaluation.
Yeah. Hey, we're in the pre-show. I'm gonna show this because
cool.
I only show because we can do that in the pre-show. It's not audio only. I guess for patrons it is, but
I'll teach them to come and look at it live.
They can come and look at it live, or they can go and find this. Let me just see here. Let me actually find this before I bring it up. But the if you go to hfes.org, they have different sub-technical groups, right? There's a different technical group that kind of focuses on different application areas. And here, let me go ahead and share this screen so you can see this. This is just on the Human Factors and Ergonomics website here. You can see that there's a bunch of different technical groups here. So things like augmented cognition, children's issues, cognitive engineering and decision making, communications.
If you think you're putting something on the screen, you're not.
Oh, I'm not. Oh, yeah. Hey, look at that. I should probably bring that up, shouldn't I? There you go. That's probably a little bit better. Yeah. So you have all these technical groups. Again, this is found right on the website, and I think this is actually is this under a login? I don't know. You can find it through like Google HFES technical groups, and you come up with it. But I would say that that's a great place to start for some of these. Yeah, here's a better look at it. That's a great place to start for some of these other subdomains of human factors and ergonomics. I think a lot of these will go into detail about what exactly they do. So if any one of them kind of stands out to you, check them out. There's also the Chartered Institute also has different sectors that they kind of break it up through, right? We kind of mentioned these ones were the high level ones that we were kind of talking about: healthcare, defense, transportation, those types of things. So some pretty good resources out there for those types of things. Great questions. I love these live questions. These always throw us curveballs, I think.
Yeah, no, it's makes it more valuable as well for, in this case, for Deep Sea Hippo as well, because they can get some straight feedback.
Agree.
It'd be interesting to know if Deep Sea Hippo is considering going into human factors, or there's somebody who are actually really good at human factors and they're just trying to test us.
Oh yeah, it could be either one, right?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Where are you at in your human factors journey, Deep Sea Hippo? Let us know. In the meantime, we're going to look for more It Came Froms, because we just need one more, and then we'll be good with the show notes here. Your favorite or recommended exercises throughout the design process. That one could be fun.
Where's that at?
It's very end.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay.
Very last one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to do that one?
Yeah, I can do. That sounds. In many ways, I don't care as long as it's got whiteboard and some post-its.
Yeah, I think I'm going to talk about for that one. Geez, what do I want to talk about? Do I talk about? Oh, of course. Now I'm blanking on the name. What is the name when you go and like check them out in person? It's like a
the shadowing type.
Yeah, but what's it called?
See, now you got me.
Geez. Oh, we sound like complete.
Going back to Yeah, whether we know what we're talking about or not.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Oh, what's it called? What's it called? It's a something analysis. It's like a
I want to say observational analysis, but it's not. There's a better word for it than that.
Wow. Wow. I can't believe this is my favorite usability thing.
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah, it's not mine, so I get away with that. See, one of my, is it my favorite?
Contextual analysis.
Okay, yeah, got you. See, I'm quite a fan of busy interviews and an engaging and observation, but a good friend of mine, she calls herself the Queen of Card Sort.
Oh, Queen of Cards.
And that's her thing, and that's what she's really, really well known for. So I always feel guilty when I do a card sort, because I'm like, I don't feel like I'm as qualified to do it because I'm clearly not obsessed by it as what she is. But we did a card sort the other day with my team. It was very exciting, especially as we're in lockdown. So it was an actual meeting that I called that we had to justify and write paperwork and a risk assessment for to actually just meet up with my team in the office.
Oh, geez. Task analysis. Is that it? I feel like I'm still missing it. Contextual inquiry. That's it. All right, I got it.
Okay.
Contextual inquiry. Okay. Wow. Geez, that was a journey. I'm gonna put that. I'm gonna put that into the show notes before I forget about it, because boy, oh boy, that would be embarrassing. All right. I'm not going to read that username, though. You see that username that's submitted?
No.
There you go. Look at that one.
So equal opportunities and all that.
Actually, you know what? I will read it because that's hilarious.
That's their name. And
that is their name, and they did say it. So, hey, getting back to Deep Sea Hippo here, Psych undergrad. Stick around. Yeah, stick around. We'll be talking about useful electives to take in undergrad in the It Came From section. And maybe it's the same person. I'm not sure. The name does not match up with who's in our Discord, but that's
fair enough.
But that's a piece of advice that a lot of people want to know. So let's see here. So I think we got everything. Let me just make sure.
It came from.
What's that?
You need to update your. It came from. No, not it came from.
It is. Okay. It is the same person.
Oh, cool.
Oh, I have. Yeah. That's that. Okay.
We're going to be talking a lot about you.
Yes, we will. I'll kind of re-talk about the answers that I gave in the Discord. You'll get Barry's thoughts on it, but I'll add a little bit to it because there's only so much you can type. So I'm glad you're here for this. That's great.
Yeah, I was going to say because it's I don't know the difference between the US courses, so US degrees and the UK degrees, in terms of just how much variation you get in what you do. I don't think we get the same level of variation. Maybe we do. I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of see differences in countries.
Because I do give some lectures on psych courses and human practice courses, but never actually done them myself. Because I did engineering. I always feel like a bit of a traitor. Or not a traitor,
Imposter.
Imposter. That's what I was looking for. But then, me and imposter syndrome, we go back. We've got a long.
We go way back.
We've got a long distinguished relationship, almost on a weekly basis. See, I have that every time I go and send an email out to somebody to interview. Like for my podcast and something, say, I know you're really important and stuff, and I'm just somebody who's trying to make a bit of a podcast, but would you be able to spare a little bit of time to talk to me? And I always get really amazed when they come back, oh, I'd love to. It's like, really, why? It's
I still experience that. I have a lot of trouble cold asking somebody to participate, which is probably why I'm I got lucky with you. You were very you actually joined the Twitch stream and were chatting with me, and I was It's like, oh, I got to get this guy on because I already know he likes to talk. So
it's but again, I was when you reached out to me to ask if I would sort of fill in for a bit, I was sitting there going, well, can I? Do I? I could do my own little podcast, but this is like a real podcast.
Oh man, and see, I was like, oh, yours is a real podcast. Over here going. Jeez.
Then we realized we both just making it up. And so, no, we are both professionals. It's good.
Yes, we're professionals. We can, yeah. Let's.
I don't know what I'm professional at yet, but I'm definitely professional.
Professional bullshitter.
I've been that for a long time. I'm very experienced.
Backed by research, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's how and why you run your own consultancy.
Okay, we got 10 minutes before we go live with the show. Hey, if we got a couple people watching, looks like if you are watching along with us and have any questions for us before we begin, let us know. Otherwise, let us know where you're watching from. I always like to get a sense of where everyone is located in the world. There's different experiences, say here in the States, than across the pond over there in the UK versus anywhere. I know we have listeners all over the world. Funny enough, one of our avid listeners and Patreon supporter, Mateo, is actually in Australia, and I know we have a couple other folks in like Singapore, Southeast Asia, India. Like they're all over, which is actually really cool. It's a global podcast. I think we're number 100 on the technology charts in Qatar. So
oh wow,
yeah, look at that.
Where did you find that out? I get some various emails and statistics, but I don't know which of them to believe and which ones to not believe.
Yeah, that's a good question. We use Chartable over here, just to kind of keep track of some health type things.
It's yeah, and I do get stats from, because my host is Blueberry, and they do some really good download stats.
Yeah.
So I get some quite detailed, actually. I can work out which people in the US and so around the world, but then also you'll go to US states and things like in UK counties and stuff, which is quite neat. So yeah, so I was looking for the roundup show of it, and I think it was something like we're in 66 countries, something like that, and I'm like, whoa,
wow.
There's some like random countries where one person's downloading. I was like, clearly somebody's on a VPN somewhere. They just had we're not sure about this, so we're going to poke it out here just in case. So
sketchy, yeah.
I've had new employees start this week.
Oh,
one more thing, but I thought it's amusing as a pre-show thing.
Yeah, you can do a little tease.
My daughter.
Oh, is a new employee?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
how's that working?
Well, she only started 2 days ago, and so she's working 2 days a week because she's getting set up to go to university. So she's at college at the moment, getting to go to university, but she's into art and things. Which, considering both me and Amanda, my wife, we're both engineers. Our children are very much into art, drama, and things like that. And I'm like, how did that happen? Got no idea. But yeah, we sort of joked for ages about, if you ever want to come join the family business, you can join the family business. That's fine, all that sort of stuff. But you're going to contribute, it's kind of freeload. And she all said, I don't want to come work for you. I think it's basically a ridiculous idea, which I kind of agree with. But now she wanted to do design and stuff, and she rocked up. So yeah, weird.
Well, look at that. That's I worked for my dad at a radio station as my first job, so I'm familiar with that. As long as you do, it's always like this weird pressure. It's like, if you mess up, you're not only letting the station down, but you're letting your dad down too. And it's like, thankfully, I didn't really ever mess up. There was, a couple times where I missed the station ID or something, but it's,
yeah,
only required by law that you do that. So it's not a huge deal.
It's not minor thing.
It happens within an hour. But yeah, that's
no,
interesting. I'm glad that is an experience that you are all navigating and trying to get through.
So now I have my wife and my daughter as employees. Though my wife is a fellow director, so not technically an employee, I guess. But
all on the payroll.
And yeah, I like to think at work I tell her what to do, and then at home she tells me what I can tell her what to do. So
there you
go.
That's
everyone's
perfect.
happy.
Healthy. I'm just going to do one more pass on the show notes to make sure that we are good here. Yeah. I feel so lost that the show notes are so complete.
I was going to say, which clearly means that halfway through them, there's like such a big clanger somewhere that
there's got to be, right? Oh, did yeah, at this point, you're right there. Did they have a conference remote? I'm pretty sure they did. Others?
Yes, no, we did 2. We've done one in. It's been there for the past 2 years.
Okay, I'll remove the question mark then. Oh yeah. Did you go to that?
No, but I had a chat with them about it, and we also had the.
Yeah, I have that. That's NEC.
Okay. Oh, of course it is. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Cool. UXPA was also remote, but that was. Oh no, that one was actually in person. Most recent one.
What else?
Interesting.
I'm sure there's another one that I did. Kind of that exciting. I wonder if there was. See, if I can do it on my phone and have a quick squeeze.
I feel like this music is different from what we normally have.
It feels a bit more Halloweeny.
Does it? Yeah. Let's switch that up. It's a little more. That's fine.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's
fine. That's my status quo. It's fine. It's good. We'll go with it.
Oh dear. Yeah, neither of us are wearing merch tonight.
No, what's going on?
I don't know.
I don't even know where my merch is. I usually have like one close by in case I need to promote. But...
Yeah, I haven't. I was busy trying to work out because I think I said last week I'm going to be podcasting from one of the CHF conferences here, and so I was like, right, I'm going to need roller banners to go behind me. I'm going to need stickers to go on stuff. We're going to need like handout stuff.
You know, I bought a big box of stickers to like hand out at conferences. We've gone to 0 conferences since I bought it a year ago with the redesign of the logo.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're still living in a pandemic.
Yeah, no, I was looking at the I can't remember whose website I was doing, but it was on about podcast merch. What is good? Because I mean, everyone does t-shirts and stuff. I've done them, you've done. But actually, what is it that people want? So like, it's like mugs and like as long as you don't send them broken. But like enamel pills.
Backstory on that.
And stuff. Yeah, that still works. It's kind. Yeah.
The old logo.
Old logo, so I'm gonna have to get the well, that wasn't even a logo, that was me just knocking something out because that didn't have a logo, and so I'm gonna have to get some ones redone. I can see this conference being very expensive, just for all this type of stuff. But we went the expensive route in 2018 when we went to HFES and had the full setup and everything. They got us set up with like lights and. Looking back on it, it was probably poorly staged, but like it was right in the central area where everyone was kind of coming through to go to their stuff, and so everyone saw us. It was really high visibility. Yeah.
But I mean, like, and the lights were like on either side of this doorway that everyone was walking through. They were pointed right at us. There was kind of enough room for 4 people, but like the way that we had the table up, everyone was on,
mini stage
like thing. Bar stools, and so like we were just trying to it was we can do better.
Yes, like I automatically used it as an excuse to get some remote microphones.
There you go.
The other bit of kit, so I actually managed to get hold of some it's in the some of the and
Oh,
they're
yes.
really very good. I've sort of started charging them up last night, so I'm looking forward to having them. I was going to maybe hook them up and give them a bit of a run out tonight, but I thought it was a bit cruel to do that on a live show.
I think so.
So,
speaking of live show, stick with us. We're going to be right back, and we'll go ahead and start our show right after this. Just stick around for 1 second while this little intro thing plays. Here you go.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Hey, episode 231. This is Human Factors Cast. We're recording this live on January 13th, 2022. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today by Mr. Barry Kirby.
hello.
Hello. Hey, everyone. We got a great show for you all tonight. We're going to be talking about how virtual conferences might be more inclusive and eco-friendly. And later, we're going to be answering some questions from the community about useful electives to take in school to augment your human factors journey, how to network when most of those networking events are happening online now, and we'll talk about some of our favorite recommended exercises throughout the design process. But first, hey, we have a Human Factors Digital Media Lab that you can participate in if that is something that you are interested in. We're really excited to have our 2022 kickoff meeting tomorrow. So it might be a little late if you're listening to this, but we're always looking for energetic, passionate people to join our lab and maybe get their hands dirty with some human factors work, or, figuring out some interesting ways to communicate human factors. I always like to plug it because it is such a cool thing that we've started over here, and I'm really proud of some of the stuff that's come out. But anyway, that's all we have for show notes, or community updates, the programming notes. That's what I'm looking for. That's all we have for those this week. We know why you're here. Let's go ahead and get into Yes, Human Factors News. This is the part of the show all about Human Factors News. We have a really interesting one this week that's kind of tangentially human factors related. Barry, what is the story this week?
So this week we're talking about how virtual conferences are better for the environment and more inclusive. So the COVID-19 pandemic has brought travel, work, and in-person conferences to a halt. But new research finds this shift has made it easier for more people who could not previously attend these events to participate and lowered their environmental footprint. Researchers have analysed several science conferences that went virtual during the early months of the pandemic. In a new paper published in Nature Sustainability, the researchers examined the environmental, social, and economic costs of virtual conferences compared with in-person events and analysed how the shift online altered participation by women, early career researchers, and scientists from underrepresented institutions and countries. The study found that virtual events lower costs and reduce time and travel commitments that had previously held some conferences back from attracting a diverse group of attendees. Also, the environmental costs of hundreds of thousands of people flying from around the world to attend a conference are eliminated. In addition to cost, in-person events are also require tremendous investments in time. These events require travel, often last multiple days, and take up all of the attendees' time while they are there. The study found that many benefits to virtual conferences, but the challenges do remain. Among them are a lack of engagement and missing out on in-person networking, and in-person conferences are beginning to return. But the researchers expect many events to create hybrid offerings, potentially at lower prices. So it seems that the idea of these conferences are potentially here to stay. What do you think of that then, Nick?
In other no-dud news, it sounds like, I think a lot of this is fairly self-evident with the benefits of some of these virtual conferences. Yes, they're more eco-friendly when you look at everything. No one's traveling to these things, and you can put it on for a relatively small carbon footprint when no one's taking planes and no one's having to stay in hotels that use energy, that all this stuff. I think it also makes sense from the other perspective where, to be inclusive, for somebody to just stay at home, and that is your sort of lodging for that conference event. The cost of admission might be lower because you don't have to reserve a space physically. It just seems very obvious to me, but I do think that this is a really cool springboard for talking about conferences just in general. I know this is a human factors show, but there are human factors conferences, and there's human factors tangential conferences that should follow this format. And it's a really interesting thing. You can actually you can use human factors principles to make conferences better. And so this is a little bit of departure from our typical human factors content, but still very relevant. Barry, what did you think of this story?
Yeah, I think clearly the pandemic has provided a real point in time to think seriously about the advantages of doing stuff online. They do say, innovation is the mother is born from necessity, and if we weren't able to do these things online, then we just wouldn't have been able to have any conferences at all. Whereas, as it happens, I think I've probably attended more conferences during the pandemic because I've been able to just dial into them, Zoom into them, Teams into them, or whatever software you care to choose. I've been able to jump into them, and I've been able to get to a lot more content, and to be able to present to a much broader range of audiences. I mean, this year we've already been to Australia. We're going to the States in a couple of weeks. We're doing, so there's various bits and bobs. And so, yeah, brilliant. And the ability for multiple people from companies to go to these sort of things, because normally if you've got one person going to a conference out of a particularly larger company, so maybe out of a department or something, because you can't afford to have 2 or 3 people out of the department. You can't afford the travel for 2 or 3 people, and that's before you get into, I think, which is one of the mainstays of that article, which is actually a lot of the underrepresented people can go there. It's not just the person who normally goes on the conference can go to the conference, or the heavyweight goes to the conference. It's the everybody can have that opportunity. But I do think, as it does raise as well, the presenting and the information side of things is one half, or probably 2/3 of what a conference is about. The other bit is actually talking to people, is the coffee breaks, is the going to go up to somebody and say, I just heard your talk. Could you come and tell me a little bit more about it, maybe? Or I disagree with you, or I wholeheartedly, that the whole interface bit is, or as somebody did to me one time, they sort of called me, suggested I was a bit stupid. But then I found out that was because I fundamentally disagreed with what they were saying in prose. But the and I'm going to do that again soon as well. But yeah, the idea that you've got to have that the bit around the fringe, that bit about going into the bar in the evening or whatever to chew stuff over and meet new friends. I still don't think we've got that thoroughly cracked online yet. So I think we'll probably talk about that in a bit as well. So
yeah, we will. I often joke that we go out networking when we're, and I do the air quotes for networking, because it is drinking at night with your human factors buddies, and just talking about the stuff that either you're presenting on or catching up on life, and that's really important. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I do think that is a really important aspect of it that I think a lot of people know is important. I'm sorry, I cut off your opening thoughts.
No, I think that pretty much summed it up. I was going to suggest that maybe do we want to talk about some of them? You mentioned in your bit that there are human factors issues in organizing a successful conference. So, what do you think some of them are?
Yeah, let's talk about them. We have a long list here. Maybe we just talk briefly about them. If we have anything to say, we can dig into them. But first and foremost is the organization of the conference itself, right? And I think if you think about before virtual only conferences or before hybrid conferences, I think there's there's a distinct difference. I know some conferences will actually require that their leadership get together in a small gathering to plan out the conference. That now has to happen digitally as well, right? There are pre-arrangements to make. There's stuff that you do after a conference is kind of like a postmortem. there's always backup plans that happen to contingency plans as well. And so there needs to be a lot of thought and effort put into the planning phase itself. And that usually results in a better conference. The better prepared you are to go in, then the better your conference is going to be. And so that planning phase is really important. We can talk about how that is impacted by being remote. I think it's fairly obvious there too. But did you want to talk about anything here, or do you want to move on to the next one?
No, I think just to sort of reinforce that whole planning bit, and it's often the plans that you don't see that show you how good a conference is. So, in obviously 2020 for the CIHF Ergonomics Conference, I remember sat in a committee meeting. Was it in January, February time, whatever? And they were in the council meeting. They were saying, "Oh well, there's this coronavirus," but we were still in a physical meeting. So it was like this coronavirus thing. We don't know quite what's going to happen. So maybe we need to think about going online and stuff like that. And you could sort of have that feeling around the room of going, yeah, I guess we should do something like that, but it's not going to happen. It'll be fine, but yeah, a bit of contingency is probably a good idea. But it just shows that the effort that the team, actual organizing team that went to. So when the pandemic hit and we were like, we need to go online, actually it felt, I know it wasn't because there was a lot of effort that went into it, but it was turnkey. It felt like it was a natural transition. And if that level of planning, that level of back planning and contingency planning shows if you've got a really good team together that they can just turn this thing on and it just runs and it's almost seamless, as if, well, what did you expect? Of course it's seamless. Makes such a difference.
How much lead time did you have on that, but between like lockdown and the event?
Look, so the Ergonomics Conference was in April, so about a month.
Okay.
So not a lot, really.
See, because I had something very similar happen to me where we were doing, it wasn't a conference, but it was for a user event. And basically what happened was it was a large gathering of, I guess, 200 plus people that were all coming together. And we were still unsure the week before the event whether or not things would go into lockdown. Things went into lockdown here in the States, I think, on that Thursday. And the event was the following Monday. And so we had 4 days to really prepare what that would look like in a virtual format. It went off without a hitch, but that's because we planned. We started thinking like, oh, yeah, this might actually happen. And then we did. Yeah, great. Let's get into academic program. I think this is really important for a lot of conferences. Barry, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so I mean, when you putting together the academic program, and sometimes I do sort of bulk a bit about the academic bit of actually, because I think we should be transitioning to a broader range, which actually the online stuff lets you do more of. But you need to have a good range of presentations. Look at the entire focus of what the conference is about. So make sure you've got a broad range of stuff that will appeal to different people's interests, because you want to go with the main core of what's going on. But actually, what happens if you want to branch out a bit, diversify, and have your thoughts tested, or the breadth tested? So don't be too scared about exploring some different bits about the format, about trying new things, such as mini courses, which may run over a couple of days during the conference, or talking posters, or let people come up with ideas about showing the content in different ways. Encourage a variety of programming, so it isn't just a straight up presentation. It could be different things in there, different delivery ways. And the printed program should be attractive. It should be easy to use. It should be easy to digest. Take that information. It's almost that souvenir of the conference. It's that takeaway that you can put on the shelf and look back with fondness and good memories. Given what we talked about, the environmental aspects, it should be made available online. So it is digital rather than just a printed program, and you should make that available before the conference goes, so people can dive into the papers, can dive into the content, and have some thoughts before they see the presentation, and so allow them to know what presentation they might want to go and see. So there's a lot about that program that you can put together and basically make it really, really attractive, but also make it really accessible in ways that perhaps we haven't always done in the past.
Yeah, I think one big point that is starting to emerge here is making this frictionless for the conference goers. I think that is kind of the theme that we're seeing, and we'll see it continue here. The next one that I want to jump into is venue. And this is something that largely was in control of physical locations, right? You could talk to a hotel and see what kind of accommodations they can make for your conference, how many rooms they have available. Now, the venue is digital, and we can talk about what digital venues look like. We've actually been to a couple conferences virtually that have interesting venues. We'll talk about those, but that's now one thing that you need to control for, but in a different way, because now everyone's in their own climate. They're in their own environment. And so this area that I'm in is my conference area. It is also where I podcast. It is also where I work. And so it is different now. You know, you no longer have to worry about things of whether or not you have good connectivity for Wi-Fi. You don't need to worry about whether or not people work online and need to take off a full day for the conference, because they can just kind of dip in and out depending on their work schedules.
Yeah.
I think this is a big one that is you don't have to worry about equipment. You don't have to worry about transportation to and from the venue. You know, there's a lot of things that now are cut out. It's like, what digital platform do I use to host this event? It's different. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say on that. Do you want to get into the social program?
Just one more thing on venue, actually, is when we talk, because we're going to talk about, or there's going to come up quite a lot about this idea of a hybrid conference, about what we do online and virtual. So that sort of goes along with venue. So how, and I don't think I have necessarily have an answer to this, but that hybrid nature is going to be something we really think about, and is going to evolve, I think, over the next couple of years, about what does good hybrid elements look like. Is it the same event at the same time? Is it a split event or whatever?
That's a great point.
Anyway, yeah. So as we sort of alluded to earlier, possibly the most important part of a good conference is the social program. When in the bad old days, the only time that you want to go and actually talk to people was in the coffee break, was in that bit, maybe at the start of the conference or just right at the end, but actually, you know, in that intervening bit when you're holding that cup of disgusting coffee and tepid tea. But now it seems to be so much different. So actually, coffee breaks themselves are an event. You've got the stands to go and look around. You've got the you're going to go and pick up your freebies, your gizzits or your goodies. But we also have the social. Yeah, you've got to have a pen. You've got to have a lanyard. Tote bags are very popular nowadays. You know, then it's a sort of, well, you've got to have the tote bag to put everything else in. So whoever gets the tote bag out first, clearly is on a winner. But a lot of the conferences we go to now also have some element of social activity. So it can be everything from quiz night to I did one with a murder mystery, which was really really bizarre, really interesting, because I also found out last minute I was one of the characters. But also everything from comedy to poetry readings to going outside and looking at city walks, etc., etc. So the conference itself is not just about the delivery of that information. It's about the opportunity to engage, and sometimes it might be the one time in the year. Certainly, what I find, because if you're going to go out as consultants in the ergonomics world, you might only be one or two of you in a larger organization, so it's not that often you get together as a cohort. And so it's that one time in the year that I think that there's a bunch of people who can get together and you can reminisce of what you've done over the past year, and maybe what you did about 5 years ago, and over a glass of wine or a jar of ale, that type of thing. But I think that they're not the only things that help make it work. Do you want to talk a bit about the importance of conference staff?
Yeah, so the staff is going to be sort of key for whether or not something is successful. A lot of times depends on volunteers being able to stand in and kind of guide some of these, I guess, discussion panels or anything. It basically depends on the people, and a lot of it is going to be who's working the registration counter and who's, checking people in, or who's making sure that you've only had one alcoholic beverage with your free ticket at the, so there's a lot of people, and there's obviously hotel staff that can help with that, but I'm using hotel or conference conference staff that can help with that. But a lot of it that really does depend on the people. And so I don't know how much this changes from a physical environment to a virtual environment, but the only thing I do see changing is the way we communicate. And so I can talk a little bit about that when we get to the conferences that we've attended and kind of the difference there. But do you want to talk a little bit about the speakers that we sort of bring in for some of these conferences? Because I think that's also another really important draw.
It is. I mean, the quality of the speaker is going to directly rank your conference in terms of what, how good your conference is going to be. It's the initial stuff that's going to draw people in, and that is also reflected in the bringing out that nature of who they are as the pre-advertising. But when you're in there as well, you listen to their presentation, you listen to what they've got to say, and they will more than likely be your lasting reflection. And so there's probably, for every conference I've been to, there's probably only one or two people that'll stick in the back of the mind and you'll bring out. They're the people that have probably done a lot of work to get you to where you're at. But it's not just them. So you've got your maybe 2-3 keynote speakers, you've got your 2-3 big guns, as it were. But there will be so many more people there who are presenting, who are just I would say just doing the day job. It's not, they're actually, for some of them, it'll be their first time presenting. It'll be, so it's about us providing a good supportive community to allow them to come and tell us what they've got to say, because they might not be that experienced at presenting stuff, but they wouldn't have been selected to come and tell us about it if the stuff they were going to tell us isn't good stuff. So whilst the big speakers are really important, so are the little guys like us. So we should cherish them all.
I agree. So I'm gonna kind of skip over the next two. I'm gonna mention them briefly, then I'll get into the next one. I only mention this because it doesn't really impact us directly, conference goers directly, I should say. So there's things like value for money, making sure that the people who are going are getting something for their money. I think that does impact us, but if you look at other things like sponsorships, that kind of helps offset those costs of having some of those materials available to you. I'll also talk briefly about advertising. Advertising happens at conferences. This is people, you see them kind of sitting in the exhibition hall, which is like another thing that we'll talk about here in a minute, but and that changes dramatically for these types of events. You can plaster advertisements all over an event online and it just becomes different. I don't see it as too different from a physical environment where you have an advertisement on, maybe a banner on the program or anything like that. It's still kind of in your face. It's still there, making its way into the unconscious. I am going to get into plenary sessions because you talked about the speakers. Yes, these are kind of the bread and butter, if you will, day job talks that are about the research that's actually being done. Maybe not these huge transformative names in the field, or it could be, but they're just presenting on some of the work that's coming out of their lab, at least in the human factors domain, right? There's sort of this feeling of belonging to a group when you have a set of topics that a plenary session is kind of centered around, right? So like one of my favorite ones at HFES, which is actually really hard to do virtually, is My VR and Me. I think it's called that or something. My VR and Me. I don't know. It's basically a room where people give a 5-minute presentation about their VR and how it's helping whatever it is, and then you can go around the room and demo those things, and it's really cool. That's harder to do virtually, but having a topic of VR and demos, that actually does bring a bunch of people together and make them feel like a group, and that also helps promote the networking aspect of it. I've talked enough. Why don't you get into the exhibition room?
Yeah, I mean the exhibition room is all about that bit where everybody can advertise their wares, be it from the books, which is obviously the popular one, anything that's lately published, and anybody who's got a desk there with freebies. I mean, this is where this is going to get harder in the virtual space. So we talked about advertising a bit earlier as well. I've sponsored conferences, both live and virtual. And one of the best things I like to sponsor are the lanyards, for example, because lanyards, everybody's got them. Presenters wear them, everything, and you get really, really good exposure. It isn't quite the same on the online. So when we moved to the online bit, and they're like, "Oh well, how could we translate that sponsorship into an online niche?" So well, I'm not entirely sure, and I'm not convinced that as a value for money from an employer, so as a sponsor perspective, we've necessarily found the right thing. I'm not saying what they've done has been bad, but I don't know whether that same level of impact is there yet. And the same is almost for exhibition rooms. How do we do the exhibition room in this virtual space? But we'll sort of see how that evolves. But fundamentally, it is a really valuable part of the conference because it's a bit where you can just have a mooch around and find that book that you can never find online and things like that. So, how do you find do you find conferences actually support speakers?
Well, yes, I think being clear in communication, sort of making sure that they are aware of what the process is for submitting a paper, for when they are going up, what the schedule looks like, all that stuff is really important. And I think this has actually changed with digital formats because now they can pre-record their recording and just give them a video, and they don't even necessarily have to be there, which is kind of really dramatic change from needing to be there in person. A lot of people will pre-record it, show up, and answer questions, have the discussion afterwards, at least from my experience. I am going to skip over a couple of these. I'll mention them briefly. I think we talked about a lot of sort of the key elements that make a conference successful. There's also considerations about the size of the conference, what to do when the conference is over, following up with participants or conference goers. There's also kind of what is included in that conference package. Is it just a conference or are there workshops as well? And then last but not least, all this we've kind of been mentioning is in effort to make sure that the people who are going to these conferences feel like their experience is a good one, and sort of reducing friction at every point along the way will kind of lead to that. Now, I do want to jump into kind of our experiences with conferences because we've gone to different conferences over the last 2 years that have happened virtually, that we've been to in the past that have traditionally happened in person. Did you want to talk about any like pick maybe one conference that you can compare and contrast, or two conferences?
Yeah, I mean the obvious one for me is the CIHF Ergonomics conference, which they held online 2020 and 2021. They were essentially the same principles, but they ran it all digitally. And you had the main presenter doing their thing, and you had a chat bar that you could actually go and chat in, and you go and dive in. And they still ran some of the other bits there because they normally run their AGM at the conference as well. And actually having the AGM online made it much more better attended than any other AGM I think they've ever had. And it allowed them to do like pre-voting and all this sort of stuff. So that was all really good. I think there is certainly a lot that they took over. The bit that didn't work quite so well in the first year because it didn't happen was we didn't get much of the social element, because actually they run a killer quiz. The quiz is normally really good, really well attended, and obviously with that happening, I felt like there was something, there was a hole in there, which then they sorted out the following year. This year is going to be quite interesting because they're doing both. They're running an online so it's all in April. So at the start of April, they're doing 2 days online, and then they're doing a physical 2 days at the back end of April. So we'll see how that runs out. But the one that we met at was the neuroergonomics conference.
Yeah, let's tag team that one because that one was really interesting. That one was the virtual venue actually made a lot of things feel like a traditional conference. They had it was a virtual environment. If you want to go check it out, check out our NEC 21 coverage, and maybe watch the videos, because we did actually. It's basically like 8-bit sprites where you're navigating around this virtual environment, going to different conference sessions that were ultimately links to Zoom links. But I mean, it worked. It was kind of like you're occupying the space. Ultimately, I think what happened is they just threw out a bunch of Zoom links and said, hey, if you're interested in this, go to this link. If you're interested in that, go to that link. And that worked because it wasn't a big conference. It was kind of small and intimate, but being able to navigate your avatar in a physical or in a virtual space was kind of interesting because you could hear other conversations going on. It was still like this weird, do I jump in and say something with this conversation? Am I just going to kind of sit over there in this corner until someone comes over and interacts with me? There were other sort of networking events that felt a little forced, especially when, like, there wasn't, I think, as part of the tools that they were using. But overall, I think it was a really interesting take on that virtual conference. What did you think of it?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, you mentioned earlier about having the staff there to help you along the way. And that's, I think, one of the things that I felt that was missing, because I spent a lot of time trying to work out what's going on. How am I meant to navigate this space? And I spent more time focusing on the navigation of the space rather than enjoying the content. But again, that was only because that was the first time I'd used it. So clearly that would be an issue I wouldn't have the next time we went in. But you're right in terms of it tried to do a replication of the space, but it wasn't. I like the fact that he went to this 8-bit approach, because it was almost like going to play Minecraft. It wasn't trying
Right.
to do anything fancy, because as soon as you go something super VR or something like that, you always get somebody, and I'm looking at you, Professor Bobstone, who jumps into any of that sort of conversation and say, well, that's not good enough. That's not, that's not quite right. And so it just negated all of that by putting onto a very common playing field, which I thought was great. It was a really different way of interacting. I don't know. I'd quite like to organize an event in that space again, something small, something intimate, to really explore how that would work. But then part of me is also like just the normal single, because the advantage the advantage that setup give you was you can run multi-track events,
Right.
which is cool. Whereas the CIHF one that I mentioned was very much single track, because you've got one screen and you're making the most of that one screen space. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah. One note on the help. I'm surprised you felt that way, because I felt the opposite. I felt the
Right.
helpers were in these bright yellow avatar uniforms with these big top hats that you couldn't miss them, and they were standing around everywhere in various places. And so maybe it's just you
Mm,
needed some offline help to without interacting with a person to navigate the space. But that's interesting.
possibly, yeah. Yeah.
I could talk about HFES as well. HFES has been different from. I didn't go to the hybrid version this year, but I know they have split that up into two separate things. I can talk about what it looks like from a virtual perspective. It looks like just a bunch of screens. It looks like you're in a virtual lobby where you can kind of go, here's the exhibition hall, here's poster sessions, here's that. And so it is kind of still figuring out how to navigate in this virtual space. But I think a lot of the stuff that we talked about here represented there. I do want to bring up a couple of these article discussion talking points. Maybe let's pick like 2 or 3 that were, or let's pick 2 each, and then we'll kind of go through them. For me, we talked about sustainability. I think one of the points here is that an in-person attendance for scientists from Africa to several recent events was on the average of 80% to 250% of their country's annual per person GDP, with approximately 3% per capita GDP for U.S. participants. And so that inequity between countries is going to be massive for being able to attend these virtual events, because anyone could go to them as long as they have internet and can pay the price of admission. So I don't know. That was one point that stuck out to me. What sticks out to you?
I was blown away by the women's participation. So the women's participation in virtual conferences increased as much as 253% compared with previous
Incredible.
in-person conferences. I mean, that's incredible. So when looking at the academia attendance by students and postdoctoral scholars, increased as much as 344%. I mean, that's just showing that it's doing the online stuff is really opening up the ability to attend this sort of stuff. And fundamentally, we sort of talked about it on previous ones, where we talked about the engagement of knowledge and sharing of knowledge and open access to knowledge. The fact that we're opening up conferences in this way is great. It is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I think that's really good.
Yeah. Another point I'll make, and this is one that we've kind of had, we had gone back and forth on throughout the points here. Approximately 75% of attendees at one scientific conference And 96% at another conference said that they preferred in-person networking and that virtual sessions felt inauthentic and contrived. And that's kind of what I was getting at with the NEC. I think there were events felt a little contrived to me. However, we're trying, and it's still unknown how to best do that in a virtual space. And I think, over time, we might get better at it as people get more comfortable with having their faces shown on camera, or, I don't know. There's just some things that we still need to figure out. But that was one thing that stood out to me. And I know that's one thing that a lot of people are still missing, is that physical interaction with other people. Any other points that you want to make here about the article?
I guess the last one from me is the climate impact. I mean, the scale of climate impact is staggering. The researchers estimated that just a single attendee of an in-person conference in 2019, averaged over the conferences analysed, had the same environmental footprint as 7,000 virtual conference attendees. So the fact that you could, on that same climate impact, you could attend 7,000 for the same virtually as doing one in person, just shows that it's, if you're going in, especially if you're perhaps not, you just want to go in for a mooch, you want to go in for a browse, you're not maybe completely bought into what a specific element that you desperately want to go and see, but you just want an overview, or you just want to keep it on whilst you're working. It's an absolutely brilliant way of doing that, and keeping your climate impact down.
Yeah, I can say definitively I attended more conferences last year than I have in any other year. I've been going to conferences. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up on the discussion. I just want to thank our patrons this week for selecting our topic, and huge thank you to our friends over at University of Texas at Austin for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post the links to all the original articles on our weekly roundups on our blog. You can also join us on our Slack or Discord for more discussion on these stories and more. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to see what's going on in the human factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you as always to our patrons. Especially want to thank our honorary Human Factors Cast staff patrons like Michelle Tripp. I do want to bring up, so Treasurer says it's okay to talk about Patreon this week. So I just want to mention that we are 2 patrons away from being able to be fully self-sustainable here at a podcast, which is kind of cool. We do actually pay for this stuff out of pocket, and the Patreon stuff actually really helps with that. We're doing this live on several different platforms that wouldn't be possible without our patrons. We have a wonderful website, again, wouldn't be possible without them. This actually goes to hosting the podcast itself on, the service that we use, SoundCloud. So there's a lot of things that Patreon money goes to. Again, we're 2 away from being able to finally wipe our hands clean and say, okay, honey, I don't have to spend any more money on the podcast. Do it for my wife.
Oh, that heavenly day.
she'll thank you. All right. Yes. Patrons like you keep the show running. Thank you all so much for your continued support. We're going to go ahead and get into this next part of the show.
It came from...
That's right. It came from. We're going to do a little something different this week. We actually got one from Discord. This is part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics that the human factors community is talking about. So if you find any of these answers useful, give us a like or whatever it is, wherever you're watching, to help other people find this content. First up today, we have one from Tara Talon. do you have any videos or helpful, useful electives to take in undergrad? So I actually answered this one in Discord, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, Barry.
Yeah, I think there's basically, I think having that idea about what it is that you want to go and do all the way through is kind of really helpful. Because if you know that you're really super keen on a specific thing, then anything you can do to block around that and support it. So looking at the adjacent route, and sort of saying, if you're into design, well, you could do design elements. If you want to be doing, if you're into sort of testing or them type of things, then you could go and cluster around that. But then the flip side is to actually it doesn't necessarily support it, but look at almost the opposites idea as well, is do something completely different as well. The beauty about the human factor side of things is there is nothing, or there's very little that won't come in useful at some point. So if you want something just to be able to provide variety in your life, you can go and do something almost completely different, because actually it will probably come back and be helpful, and it will provide you some variety in the course that you're doing. So it kind of goes back to it depends. Depends what you want out of life. I think personally, if you focus too much on just one thing, you might not burn yourself out, but sicken yourself in doing that. So trying to find different things to do that are tangentially useful, but are different, I think help make a more interesting course that way. What about you, Nick? What was your words of wisdom?
Yeah, great. So great feedback. I think I want to mention one thing too. Tara Talon is in the chat. So if there's any other clarifications, this is rare that we actually have an "it came from" where the person is in the chat with us. So if there's any other clarifications, let us know. So I mentioned that there are, in my head, there are three kind of ways in which you can tackle this, right? There's the fun route. The electives are, I think, meant to do that. They're encouraging you to go and look at hobbies or augment your experience. I think, for me, I did like an archaeology class, which was something that was cool. And I actually learned a lot from that class. I don't know if I use that stuff in my human factors training, but I'm glad I took it. It was fun. There's also, like music classes that you can take that will help stimulate your brain in other ways. And this is what I traditionally call the fun hobby route, right? There's also the support route, which is kind of like a way to augment your experience with stuff that will help you in the long run, right? You said maybe a business class here or there, maybe maybe an engineering class to figure out how people write requirements, maybe a design class to help understand how that process is done, maybe a software development class to understand kind of what's possible with code and what different languages do. All these are really good options. Although you talked about burnout, that's a possibility here. But again, if you have interest in any of these things, you can almost double dip and say, yes, this is going to be fun and I'll learn something for it. Then there's what I almost don't recommend. It's kind of what I did in a lot of ways. It's kind of the fast track path. It's the quick and easy, pick courses that have easy teachers that is, you don't care about the content. You can just kind of do the quizzes and skate by. And the reason that this is an option is because it will help you focus on some of the other classes that might be tougher. So if you're going to have to take in your program a very tough class with a very tough professor that has the reputation of being tough, this might be an option to offset some of that work that you'll have in another class. So all I'm saying here is just be strategic about it. I do want to bring up Frank, who's been on the show. He's actually in Discord too, responding to this. Frank is recommending the full support route, especially if those classes can be rolled into a minor. So this is kind of augmenting that major with a minor. Frank argues that hobbies can be pursued at less costs than going to college. And I agree. I think there's plenty of resources available to folks that they can go and find information for hobbies, but they don't have that one-on-one with a teacher, which I do think is really valuable for those. So I'm going to argue for still looking into that approach. I think there's a communication class is another thing that I brought up that you can use to augment. We do a lot of communicating. Sitting here on a podcast, I'm communicating with you right now. I communicate with users. I communicate with stakeholders. There's a lot of things that you can learn from that class. Dictation, speech and dictation, that is something that you can also learn. Different languages, that's also communication, right? I know there's some language requirements in some of these things. I'm going on and on and on, but this is just to give anyone who else might be in this situation some ideas on how to look at this. So I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts. Do you have any other closing thoughts on this one before we move on?
Yeah, I guess the two that I would almost really push is one, you've already said, the communication side of things. So much about what we do in Human Factors is about bringing different groups of people together and being able to communicate with them, and including that is that public speaking element about being able to present. Not everybody is confident in public speaking. I mean, even now, I think we talked in the pre-show about imposter syndrome and things like that. Finding good techniques to get over them sort of issues is really, really helpful. The second one is project management. So learning a bit about project, not an in-depth course or anything like that, but learning about particularly the two main styles of agile and waterfall project management is quite useful, because you will come across quite a lot of that in different bits, and just knowing the terminology will give you a significant jump start in your early career, I would suggest.
Yeah. One last note. I did forget to mention that Frank also said that a writing class could be helpful. So I do think that is situational, but I do a lot of writing, so I can stand by that. All right, let's get into this next one here. This one is, with most networking events happening online, what are some of the best ways to network for those who are looking to begin a career in human factors or UX? This is from Brewmaster21 on the user experience subreddit. They go on to write, I've personally found it rather difficult to network through online events. What are some ways that a fairly new graduate like me can network with fellow designers? Barry, do you have any advice for this person?
Well, this really hits into what we were talking about earlier in the main topic. It's almost like we thought about
like,
it.
Yeah, it's almost like we prepared.
Scary. I don't know. It is quite difficult, isn't it? Because I mean, we talked about the neuroergonomics conference and being able to just, I mean, that's one of the first places that me and you had a discussion, for example. So you can go and do it, but it's almost, I almost find it no harder, but also no easier than a physical conference, because I don't know about you, but I sort of struggle quite a lot. If I'm in a crowded room, I don't know anybody, I'm not the best in the world at just going up to a random person and going, "Hi, I'm Barry. Tell me about why you're interested." Or doing that whole just interacting with people just off the cuff. I'm not very good at it. I have to really steel myself up to go and do it. So I think the first, on doing it online, know your platform, know that you can, how it works. And it's already been highlighted. I clearly missed a major part of the neuroergonomics bit about how to use it. So make sure take that bit of time to learn the platform. But also don't be afraid. Most people who, if you go up to them and virtually or physically and say, "Hi, I'm such and such, I'm interested in what you're saying," or "I disagree," or whatever, most people will go, because then most people are feeling probably very similar to what you are. And yeah, just go and make some friends, though I fully recognize how difficult how hard it is to do that. But nobody's going to bite your head off.
Yeah. I echo that. It is hard. I think one piece of advice I would have for you, if you are looking to connect with other professionals online, there's conferences, but then there's also other things. You can join communities. So we're actually talking with you that you've posted in a community, you've posted in a subreddit. Maybe follow up with people on some comments from this thread that you've created. Join other communities. Hey, we have a Discord and a Slack that you can join and talk to us about. If you're listening to this and find it helpful and want to connect with other people, sometimes it's quiet, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes we get great questions and great discussion in there. And that is another way that you can communicate with people. You have to put yourself out there. You have to ask questions. But, I try to at least reach out to people who are in our community. So if you want to connect, let me know. We can, and you never know what you're going to find from those connections too. I don't have to go and tell you the value of doing networking. I think you get that. but maybe if you're interested in something, I could put you in touch with somebody else, and you don't know that until you interact with a community. And so there are online communities that you can join. I would say, Facebook groups, maybe there's something there, Discord, Slack, Reddit, any social media, go check those out. I don't know. That's kind of my advice. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think just kind of echoing what you said, Liz. Look at the different platforms. I mean, I'm seeing a starting to see a bit of a growth on things like TikTok and Snapchat and things like that. If you see something on TikTok that you find amusing and stuff like that, obviously there is loads of, depending on how the algorithm's working for you, you get to see a variety of things. But I'm seeing my algorithm has sort of evolved, so I'm seeing a lot of space stuff at the moment. And just being able to drop a comment in there and say, "Oh, I'm really liking your work," or whatever. On any platform, if you give some feedback, chances are the content creator will reach back out at you and say hi, or somebody else in the thread will say hi as well. So, yeah, just bite the bullet and just say hello. But also going to groups and stuff that are around what we do. Sometimes I get convinced to go into the business breakfast networking events, and as soon as I walk into them, I wish I could walk out of them, because it is the one where you're in a room full of everything. Most people have never even heard of human factors or anything, and trying to sell that to some small business owner is incredibly difficult, and quite frankly, is a waste of my time. And the breakfasts are not normally that good anyway, so I'd avoid them.
I can hear Blake in my head saying, go to local things. Like there's meetups and there's local chapters of Human Factors and Ergonomics Society here in the States. There are local things that you can go to and network with them locally. I'm just hearing him in my head. Not literally. It just, he's there.
That'd be weird.
And so maybe do that. And of course, he probably has a lot of recommendations for that. Okay, let's get into this last one here. Your favorite recommended exercises throughout the design process. I'm going to say this name. I swear to you, this is what it is. It's by Tifa's Titties on the user experience subreddit. What was last week? We were talking about NASA relabeling their sleeves. And now we're talking about, okay. So they go on to write, hello and good afternoon. I have a question for all of you who have gone through the design process and would love some input. I'm currently a boot camp student who has finished the first phase of my coursework. As I move ahead, I'll be working on some capstone projects to build a portfolio. While doing so, I want to push myself and expose myself to as many different tactics and methods in the design process. I have a fairly strong list of exercises to use as I work, but I wanted to hear from the professionals who have had hands-on experience and may be able to shed some insight. What are some of your favorite design recommended exercises throughout the design process? Barry, what are some of your favorite exercises?
I don't know whether I've got particular favorites, and it sounds such almost a sort of professionally thing to say, is I use whatever's appropriate to the task. That's completely not right. I do have things that I'll go, yeah, well, thank you, and quite right too. But no, I think in the grand scheme of things, I do like, I like a good card sword, but I also love, I like a good focus group is my favorite thing. I like the ability to get all of your, because I'm a great believer in sort of the agile, the sort of the Scrum approach in things. I like getting both software engineers or in the room and your end users in the room to break down your task analysis piece. And the reason I love it so much is you can sit in there and you get, particularly if you've got your team well prepped, that you can turn around and say, right, how do you do such and such a job? And you'll get one user coming in saying, right, well, we do this, and then if you've set it up right, then somebody else turn around and say, oh, no, that's not how we do it. We do it like this. And you first get that nice bit of discussion there. Then you get the software engineers chipping in saying, oh, but don't you do this? Because this is how this is how we believe in our heads that this was going to happen. If you can generate that sort of discussion, then I feel like you've done your job, and then you can sort of record that down. And so that's the sort. If we can set that up properly, now it's the sort of thing that you can do really well in a room, lots of post-its and all that sort of stuff. That's fab. but I'm still trying to get the same sort of appreciation online. So we can run these sort of things online through Teams, etc. But I still struggle to get the same spark moment. So we've been, using various tools to try and make that work. But I do have a friend as well who's she's really good at the whole card sorting piece, and she's known as the queen of card sort. So whenever you need that sort of thing, you always pull her in onto that project because that's very much her go-to, which I find fascinating. What about you, Nick? What's your piece of choice?
Yeah, I have two that when paired together are extremely powerful, but I'll talk about the first one because I forgot the name of it before the show. I had to look it up. It's a contextual inquiry. A contextual inquiry is when you go out to the site of somebody who's using your product and you get what it actually looks like to use that thing in the context of their environment and their working environment. And so if you think about something like maybe, I don't know, an electrician going out to an electrical relay who's trying to operate on an electrical relay. They're trying to press all these buttons in a very cramped space. You need to know that. You need to know that they have gloves on their hands before they interact with the thing. So you can't make it a capacitive touchscreen. It has to be pressure sensitive touchscreen. You have to do all these things. I'm speaking from experience here. That's actually something I've worked on in the past. Also with the defense industry, you don't know that they're in this very quiet room with this very locked down computer that they're working across two monitors, and they need both monitors up at the same time, but yours is a web-based application that you can't really spread across the two monitors, and sometimes they're different aspect ratios because they use what's available to them and things break. It's all this stuff that you get in these contextual inquiries. And when you pair those with things like usability tests, where you have them do those tasks in the environment in which they're operating, you can really get some great insight. So I'd say those two: contextual inquiry, usability test. All right, we have just a couple minutes left. We're going to get into this next section called One More Thing. Needs no introduction. Barry, Spark Notes One More Thing this week. What's your one more thing?
So I've done something which I've never really done, it's been almost a life-changing moment for me this week. And that's we've taken on a new employee in the business, and that's my daughter. So my daughter's now 17. She's looking to go to university and stuff, but she wanted a job to make some money and all that sort of stuff. But also she's really into art and all that sort of stuff. So I was really keen to work out how we can, given that we do a lot of design work, could we stretch what she does into doing more digital design? Because obviously that is a future. That's where the future is of art in many ways, and also what we do. But also it's quite nice. I mean, obviously we run the business, me and my wife anyway, so we do already have that idea of family working. But it's just it feels like almost a seminal moment where we've my daughter's old enough to employ, and she's now joined what is now truly a family business. So that's been quite a moment. I printed out her ID card today and everything. It was a thing.
Big moment.
Yeah. So I think you said earlier that you've been part of a family business with your parents. So
yeah,
I think some of the advice you gave earlier, I think is very useful to sort of see it from that side.
Just tell her don't mess up.
Well,
family businesses are always tricky. That's
well, it's multiple relationships, isn't it? It's
it really is. Different hats.
Yeah, I mean, we employ family, but also close friends as well. Which is possibly something you shouldn't do either, but it's worked for 10 years now. It's okay. Yeah. But my other thing is I'm trying to learn a new language, which for somebody of my aging years, I've never found languages easy anyway. And so, but now we've moved to Wales, and so we've been here 4 years. Then I think I should make the effort. So I'm starting off. Got one of these apps, and I'm starting to learn the very basics, or literally 2 days ago started to learn the very basics of a new language, and already I'm struggling, but we'll get there.
You'll get there. Yeah. For me, last week I talked about mental health. Go get yourself some mental health. This week I'm going to talk about physical health. So I'm actually seeing a chiropractor for the first time in my life. I've got the whole X-ray thing, and my neck is supposed to be straight, and it's supposed to be curved, and it's actually straight. And so I'm going 3 times a week for the next couple months to get everything all straightened out, and physical therapy, and that's my spine is fucked. So it's just bad. But
by the end of this year, you're going to be amazing.
I hope so. Focusing on mental health and physical health. Yeah, 2022 is the year, right? All right. Well, that's going to be it for today, everyone. If you like this episode and enjoy some of the conference-going conversation, we invite you to check out our most recent HFES Presidential Town Hall, where we actually talk to them about HFES and the conference itself. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can always join us on Slack or Discord. You can visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, there's a couple things you can do. 1, leave us a review wherever you're watching. That is free for you to do, and it really helps us out. 2, tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is how we grow. And 3, consider supporting us on Patreon. Like I said, we're 2 away from being self-sustainable. And as always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. I want to thank Mr. Barry Kirby for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about becoming a family member and getting hired by you?
That might cause me a divorce. But you can find me on Twitter at Baz_K, or you can, my 2022 program is about to start on the 1202 Human Factors podcast, so you can find us at 1202podcast.com.
You can always adopt. As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me streaming on Twitch sometimes when I feel like it for mental health reasons, and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning in to Human Factors Cast. Until next time,
It
depends. Hey, if you're sticking around with us, stick around just a little bit longer. We're going to do a post show if you want. Take questions from the chat. All that stuff. I don't know. That was a good show. I think
that was quite a laugh.
That was a little tight on time. I'm going to have to fix something.
I was watching that thinking, we getting there, that I realized I probably shouldn't have waffled much earlier on rather than trying to come everything at the last minute. So
that's okay. It's fine. It all ends up fine. Yes. That was a good episode. I think it's interesting to talk about conferences from this perspective. We've talked about it before in like some of our conference coverage, but I think we talked briefly about it on the show. But to see it in context of all those different attributes and variables, and to get the numbers behind it on this study, it's really interesting.
It is interesting because I still think we've got some way to go to get that blend right. So I've been talking a lot with with what they're doing the CHF this year, because I'm hoping, fingers crossed, and it's looking quite promising, that a significant chunk of the online piece is going to be around climate ergonomics. And so we've got a paper in there. I'm half chair. I'm doing one of the I'm not doing the keynote. I've got a keynote speaker and I'm interviewing them for the keynote. So they're not just giving a speech. I'm going to try and do an interviewee type thing, which might not look too dissimilar to what we're doing here, because we've got to hopefully pre-record it and I'll do it through my bit. So that's really cool and really engaging for everybody. But it's still also, again, how do you get that last third? How do you get that bit of the engagement right, of being able to talk to people? Because I really do enjoy, and the Ergonomics Conference is probably the conference I go to for the social. Most of the conferences I go to because you want to go to the content, or you're being made to go because you're presenting or whatever. But the Ergonomics Conference is that one that I go to because I want to catch up with people and but talk shop. Because you want to talk about what you've been doing and potentially what else can be going on. So how do we make that bit work properly? Because we're not there yet. Will the metaverse help?
Yeah, that's a good question. So good plug, I guess. So we do a choose the news. If you're unaware, if you're watching, listening, we do a choose the news poll every week on our Twitter. That kind of supplements the patrons choose the news. So the way it works is there's some allocation of points that we give to the general public versus our patrons. And up next week, one of the topics is expert says people will soon live their entire lives in the metaverse. That is a topic that we could talk about on next week's show. So that interests you, we'll post our Twitter poll on our Twitter a little bit later tonight, so you can go and vote on that. We'll have it up for the next 7 days. So
the simple answer to that is no, they won't. But yeah.
No, I don't think they will too. You got to eat, right? You got to sleep.
but
And
it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think we are, we are getting more that way. But I've still so I do a part of a lecture I do to human factors adjacent students, so psych students and things like that, is around getting people to think differently about technology. And so I have almost a reverse. So you look at somebody looking at the phone. I typically have a photo of my wife when we were out on a date, actually. Her sat there at the other side of the table just looking at a phone. But then if we look at it as thinking, oh, they're just looking at that object. But actually, they're not. It's almost it's a gateway, isn't it? So
they're in another world.
Yeah, and clearly just more interesting than me. So yeah, it is interesting. It's perception. It's all that sort of stuff. I don't know, this whole metaverse thing so far is distinctly underwhelming. I mean, they said all this sort of stuff about Second Life and all that sort of stuff, and that sort of started to get somewhere, and then it stuttered, and then just didn't. I think it's going to be an interesting second realm, because I mean they say the same about Minecraft, don't they? So
Right.
Minecraft realms and all that sort of stuff. I do still dabble in Minecraft. I quite like a bit of Minecrafting now and again, just to dive out of reality. But they're still not the same. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing to me has always been like, well, how can you string together these multiple VEs, virtual environments, in a way that is seamless and easy, right? I think the concept of a metaverse is fascinating, intriguing, and challenging to think about. And I think I have opinions on how it's being handled currently. I think maybe there's some over ambitious. It's really ambitious right now, right? I don't know if we're ready for it. Technology, sure, I guess, but there's still some lingering questions there that, like I said, how do you make it seamless and easy for people to navigate from one thing to another, and do it in a way that is, I guess, rewarding and fun too. Like, there's still a lot to figure out, and I guess the fact that we're starting down the path of trying to figure out how to do that is, I don't know, promising from somebody who's interested in those topics. It's not going to be for grandma. It's not going to be for, No,
I mean, we're still at the very early adopter stage of the journey. In fact, are we even an early adopter? We're still at the stage before that, where we're looking at getting the technology right, getting them sort of bits in play, because it still isn't, like I say, it isn't fulfilling. It's still very much of the the engagement just isn't rich enough yet. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think we're always it's got to keep evolving, unless we, a bit like what Elon Musk is doing in the various, like the space sector and stuff. Until you've got people willing to push stuff out really hard but really good, then we're always going to say that. So we need to hang tight with these ideas, with these experiments, try them out, use them, give them a good user testing, explore them, see what works and what doesn't, and then junk the rubbish and congratulate the good. I'm particularly enjoying the Quest 2 at the moment.
Oh, you have one?
Yeah. I think it's really good. So we played with the what was the coded version called, the original, the Rift, the Oculus Rift.
Oh yes.
And so we had a company that we were working with. They got one of the early versions that did some work with it, and then I was like, it's brilliant, but there's a lot of it's coded. You needed a separate headset, because I was like, it needs integrated sound, because you that needs to be tied up so much. And they're one of the early companies in the UK to actually partner their headset with a set of really good headphones, which was really neat. So now that you've got the Quest 2 that has it integrated, the controllers are largely intuitive, and the graphics are really good. The only bit that they really got to work on is the whole thing steaming up. But That works after you've sweated for a while.
Right.
But no, it's at a relative, it's much more friendly price point as well. So it's not cheap, but it's not expensive either. So no,
Right. It's I still have a DK2 developer kit 2 for the Oculus somewhere around here. So
that was super expensive, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I have the PSVR, and looking forward to PSVR 2. I do want a Quest 2. And I'm an enthusiast, but I've been out of the game for too long. I feel like a lot of things have changed, and I really haven't been keeping up with research the way I used to.
Yeah.
For one reason or another, I've been focused on other domains and kind of fell out of it. And I feel like it is no longer. It's sad for me to say this. I feel like it's no longer new and exciting. I feel like there's still a lot to figure out, but it's beyond that. I guess honeymoon phase of.
It doesn't feel novel anymore. It's
right. It's kind of an accepted part now of how we are doing things in certain ways, right? Like you have VR coasters, or you have, VR therapy is another topic that we could potentially talk about next week. And I just feel like it's become more mainstream, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, that's actually kind of what I wanted to research. But there's, I don't know. I just feel like it's the general public's reaction to it has been interesting. I feel like a lot of people still like they feel like it's a part of everyday life for some people, but don't maybe appreciate the potential it has.
Yeah, I think for me it's almost so the whole VR thing is getting leapfrogged, I think, in the general public by augmented reality.
Yes,
because it's still fixated with the use of a phone as a portal. The VR domains is still gonna, and it always is for a long time, going to be struggling with the fact that you have to put on a headset and you have to put yourself away from your physical environment. And really the big thing that your average Joe Blogs person struggles with is somebody might tap them on the shoulder, somebody might trip them up, somebody might. You might trip over a towel or something if you're like me and you're using it in the bedroom or whatever, It's that the integration between the VR and the real world. If you're doing that, just putting your goggles on, it's still there's a strong element of trust there that we struggle to get over. Whereas AR, it is more seamless because of the nature of what it is. So.
And AR by its own merits is much harder to develop for, because you have to have some sort of physical markers in a real environment to map onto, right? I can see some applications translating very well. Like let's just take a fun example of Beat Saber. If you're unfamiliar, Beat Saber is where you just have two lightsabers and you're just slashing little boxes that come at you as you're kind of moving, and it's like a dance, right? And so it's a rhythm-based game. You're smashing these boxes, and so something like that is now done in VR, and it occludes your whole vision, and these things come at you, and fine. I can see that being translated very easily to an augmented space where now you have the marker as a TV. You put like 4 QR codes on either side of your TV on the 4 corners, and maybe you still have or this could be with any games, really. You just have, sort of 3D elements coming at you through the screen, but it's augmented, and you can interact with those elements in the physical space, meaning outside of the TV, right? So I can see some translation where this could be cool, but they'd originate from the TV and come at you, and you still have awareness of your environment because you're seeing everything around you, and so you can see that towel in front of you, or you can see your toddler running in front of you as he's excited about a fire truck, and you don't want to hit him with a controller because you're not blinded anymore. You have awareness of what's going on in physical environment. So
you were there when I did that, weren't you?
No. No.
So anyway, but no, I think you're absolutely right. Now I think the ability for it depends where we want people to be immersed, I guess. I mean, one of the best things you talked about the PSVR, one of the best things I saw on that was the Apollo 11 thing that they've got. And so it was brilliant. Basically, it goes through the whole stage, everything from Kennedy's speech. And so you're sat in a room watching Kennedy's speech on a TV, and you look around you and you're in that room, and it's amazing. Then you basically go do all the different stages through the through going up into the into the Apollo spacecraft. You sat down, you go through, and you're actually in the cockpit. You can see the 1202 alarms go off, just plug there, and the and you do the landing, and that was such an immersive experience. I was sat there going, wow. And now you automatically get into maybe it's just me being a bit of a geek in the how can you reach this stuff, how can you see it, there's so many displays and controls, how on earth could you take in all this information at any one time? And it was a fantastic, really, really cool bit of kit.
For me, that moment was when I did one of the Star Wars. It was like a Star Wars Rogue One add-on for Battlefront, and it starts you off, and the first thing you see is a big AT-AT walker walking by you, and you really get a sense of scale and scope. And it's not in any environment; it's just a white environment, and you see this big walker, walking past you, and then, you hit start, and you are inspecting your X-wing. You're walking around your X-wing, and you look at all the parts and pieces. You climb into it, and you see all the controls, and you say, "I'm ready to go." And the cockpit comes down on you, and then the next thing, you're flying in space, and
Right.
You have the whole Rebel fleet around you, and you're in your cockpit, and you're flying an X-wing, and everything's just like the movies, and you're flying around, and you're engaged in this story, and it's super cool. And then they came out with a whole video game around flying in a cockpit, which was just rad. It's so cool. It's when you want to be transported to another world, it is just absolutely, you can't be beat by doing that. It's just, when that game came out, the Squadrons, when that came out, I locked myself, or I didn't lock myself. I kind of just blocked off my time at night. It came out around my birthday, I think, and I was just like, hey, I'm going to do this. It came out around my wife's birthday, and I had to figure out
less good
when I was going to do it. Less good. So I had to figure out when I was going to do it, but I basically just said, okay, I'm going to take one night and just kind of like stay out here, headset on full blast. I was sitting in complete darkness because you don't need a TV screen on, and it reads the signals better, and just got so immersed in that story, and it actually really helped. Funny enough, that being able to look around a cockpit actually really helps with dogfighting. And so you can track them with your eyes and move with your controls. Kind of reminded me of like riding a motorcycle, right? Where you look in the direction that you want to go and you track your body towards that. Yeah. So cool. So cool. Anyway, if you want to hear us talk about the metaverse, vote on that poll next week.
Yes, because clearly we've got a lot to say about it.
Yes.
What's the latest on Blake? Do we know? How's he doing? Is he?
Good? He is good. I think that's all I can say.
Fair
He's
enough.
good. Yeah, he's great.
Cool. So I see he's been doing lots of work in the background of doing the It Came Froms.
He's been doing the It Came Froms in the background, which have been getting some good traction. So that's
cool. It's I like the graphics work. It's very good.
Yeah.
So
it's like we're a real podcast with our reactions. So,
I know, it's scary.
We should make like just absolutely ridiculous reactions right now. I'll send them timestamp. You want to do it? Just go.
Go on then.
Okay, I'll send him that timestamp. What is it? We're 148.50. Okay,
50, yeah, ish.
148.50. I'll send him that timestamp here. 148.50.
Actually, the other thing I got sent the other day, what was it? Repurpose IO. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Repurpose IO.
Yeah, so it allows it takes your stream and allows you to basically chunk it all up and throw it out to different platforms for you.
Interesting.
So I had a bit of a go. So you can particularly if you like say you're doing what or I've been doing, which I've got a lot of content that's just audio only. It will then put into
Podcaster
YouTube format
Yeah.
and it'll do clips and stuff. So I've had a bit of a play. So it'd allow me to do 10 things. So I took 10 of my previous episodes and chucked it onto YouTube, and that seemed to be actually a really seamless, easy way of doing things. It was really quite neat. And then I just got an email from them today, so I did their trial, made that play, and so I'm now going to have a look, because now they've sent me a thing today saying that they'll do it into TikTok as well, and something I think that's something I'm quite interested in, because obviously that's where the cool kids are at the moment.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to have a play with that probably this afternoon. No, tomorrow afternoon, because I've already missed this afternoon. So
what plan is that on? I don't see TikTok on any of these. Must be.
No, literally, I've had the email today saying, "Oh, why is it doing that?" Why is this? Oh, I need to do that now. What did the email say? It says brand new integration available to everyone. So, but that's literally the email I had today. So it might not actually be on the website properly yet.
So I guess my question is, like, what makes this different from Restream, right? Because we're broadcasting this on LinkedIn, we're broadcasting this on Facebook, we're not broadcasting on Instagram, we're broadcasting on YouTube. I guess Instagram would be nice to have. That I wouldn't have to do.
Yeah, so the repurpose one isn't live. It's taking content you have and then redistributing it everywhere else as well. So it's not too. So obviously, what we're doing here is taking it and then redistributing it live as we go. That will take it and then not only take full-on things, but it'll find clips for you. So your 10-second clips or your 1-minute clips that you want to go out to different areas. Now it'll do a lot of it automatically.
What does that magic look like behind the scenes? Like, how does it pick?
I've got no idea. That's my exploration for sort of this weekend coming up. Is I can see how it does the big stuff, and actually it did the big stuff really well. But I'm playing with it at the moment to see what the clips look like, and how we can do that automatically. Because I'm not convinced.
I'd be really curious to hear what your success is with some of those clips, because that could be really cool to like throw in your stories or whatever on Instagram, or does it do it all automatically? Like, you just give it a video and it finds those things and posts them for you. Just say
apparently so. You can top it and tail it. So what I've done with early episodes, I've taken some chunks of early episodes. I think was it this with the whole ones, or I tried to set it up so I take the my new YouTube front and back end that I use on my stuff now, and then it'll put that into the old. So it'll then essentially repurpose the old audio into a video that has a sort of moving voice line and things like that.
Right.
And it'll take the podcast artwork and put that straight into it. So it does all that bit automatically. So it'll just take that straight out the RSS feed. Yeah, I think it's got potential. I just need, like you said, I need to understand how it takes the clips, because how does it know what an interesting clip look like?
Right. Exactly. Like, is it going to take this conversation and be like, oh yeah, we're talking about this thing, and this is the clip right here, and that's not interesting.
Exactly. So I don't know that. So I will report back.
I imagine, this is my guess, is it looks at if you link up an account. Is that what you do?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've linked up my RSS feed.
So it is looking at statistics behind the scenes. So like, if you were to hook up your YouTube account, what you would do is it would look at where are these spikes in people looking at that data, and it would go, okay, that's an interesting moment, let's pull it. But you need to have data for that, right? So as a podcaster, you're not going to get that type of fidelity, because I don't know, like we get maybe 10 views per video on YouTube, so people are watching them, but it's not nearly as large as our podcast audience. And so I would really be interested to see if you could take the data from a podcast feed and port that to a video and say, like, hey, we have all this data for the podcast, can you bring that into the video and see what's going on there? bring in stats from like Restream where, you know, we have live viewers and they'll say, oh yeah, there were like 10 people watching here. That's a hot moment. Let's, you know, pull it up. Or somebody made this a clip on Twitch. Can we pull those in? Right. I'd be curious. Let me know. I really want to know about your experience with it, and maybe we talk about it in the lab meeting at some point.
Yeah, that's true. So I'll be playing with it. Hopefully, setting it up over this weekend. Because like I said, I had a 2-week. Was it 2 week or what? Basically 10 download trial,
Okay.
which I've done. But they've just sent me the email saying, "Oh, because we're doing the TikTok stuff as well. Do you want to restart your trial?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do want to restart the trial because that will give me another 10 bits of content. Thank you very much."
That's awesome. That's
so
awesome.
Hopefully, I've sent them the email saying yes, I'd love to. So we'll I'll try that 10 with some clips and see how it clips up, because basically you set up some work streams, and it's quite seems to be quite neat. It's you know, even I could do it. So
Wow.
but let's see how it goes.
It's a glowing endorsement.
Glowing recommendation.
Even I could do it.
Yes. So
all right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and cut it just a couple minutes early tonight. And
cool.
Yeah, if you've been hanging out with us, thank you for hanging out with us. Appreciate it. Always love the live interaction. And if you're listening later, thank you for listening. We truly appreciate it.
Indeed.
And yeah, I guess we'll be back next week. Maybe talk about the metaverse. Maybe talk about what are the other topics? Let's see here. It's either metaverse, VR helping with therapy, or autonomous drone helping save somebody's life for a cardiac arrest patient. So,
interesting.
That is some interesting stuff. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.